Hey there, good morning, happy Monday. I hope that you had a fabulous weekend and that your week is off to a great start. Mine is, I just finished my yoga practice. I'm feeling very productive and energized today. Yesterday was the last day of Complexion's 2 week run at the Joyce Theater, and it was spectacular. If you missed it, you missed it because the kids were just twirling and the choreography was fantastic, and it was just a very inspiring and uplifting experience. So I'm feeling super amped today. So much so that I actually am taking time to come out here and talk to you all because you all have been busy. But I did want to share something that I think is really important as I've been reflecting on all of my relationships in spaces where I'm trying to develop stronger, more intimate relationships with family members and close friends. When we get into discussions with people and people are sharing their point of view, just as a reminder, or maybe you're hearing this for the first time, you don't necessarily have to understand or have gone through their experience in order to honor them, respect them, and receive the fact that that is the truth for them, whatever it is that they are saying. I sometimes will hear people, and I think I've said this myself too. Well, you're in an argument with somebody or a discussion with somebody, or they're sharing their point of view, and you're like, well, I don't get it. I'm sorry. I don't understand. And there was a time when I felt like, in order for me to be able to listen to another perspective or hear another perspective and really respect it and honor it, that I had to get it. And what I've come to realize is that there is a level of spiritual arrogance embedded in that perspective for a couple of reasons. Number one, to think that I, from the outside looking in, can ever have a full understanding and appreciation for somebody else's experience is arrogant because that other person actually lived it. And for me to say, oh, I understand, oh, I get it, right, means that from the outside, not having gone through what you've gone through, I've gotten the lessons that you've got. I have gotten the trauma that you've gotten. And that's just not the case. That's an arrogance. And as I look at the diversity and inclusion work that's happening so much now in this culture, there's a lot of emphasis on teaching other people about other people's experiences, which I think is important. I think that it's important to know the history and the contributions and the trials and tribulations of other people with whom we share space, with whom we share this planet. But at the same time, it's done in such a way where we think that by telling other people about our experience that they're going to get it, and all of a sudden now they're going to think this way, or they're going to ride for us, or they're going to be our allies, and that type of stuff. And there's an arrogance underneath that because my experience is complex. I'm a complicated person. I'm a complicated individual. And I don't even understand myself sometimes. And so the thought of having to explain myself to somebody to the point that they get it as a prerequisite for them to then understand and respect me, I'm not rocking with that, right? There are certain things that I am never going to understand. There are certain things that I am never going to get, and I'm okay with that. And if somebody comes to me that has a different experience than I do, or sees themselves differently in this world, I don't necessarily have to get it to respect them and honor them and engage with them in a way that they find to be respectful. I don't get to tell them, well, I kind of get what you're saying, but it doesn't really resonate for me, so I'm going to keep doing this way. It doesn't work. For me, a good relationship, an intimate relationship, requires that we suspend our imagination, suspend our logic, and suspend this need to understand everything that the other person is saying or to agree with everything that the other person is saying in order to honor them and respect them. Several years ago, one of my nephews and nieces are godsends to me because they have been the best spiritual teachers that I could ever ask for. You hear me talk about them often. I have learned a lot about myself and my shortcomings from things that have come out of those children's mouths. Several years ago, one of my nieces, something had happened. She's 16 now, so she had to be maybe 7 or 8 at the time. Something went down. And in order for me to try to sort of placate her, make her feel better, I was like, well, that's not really a big deal. Don't worry about it. And she stopped me dead in her tracks. She said, Auntie Muadi, it is a big deal to me. And I had to pause in that moment and be like, you know what, it's right. You don't have to get it, Muadi. You don't get to minimize her experience just because you don't understand it, or maybe you think you've outgrown it, or maybe you think you've seen it before. It's real to her. And rather than sitting trying to convince her that it's not a big deal, the responsible thing to do, the loving thing to do, the spiritually responsible thing to do is to accept her at her word and move from there. Accept for her it is a big deal. Accept for her that it is hurtful, and then figure out from that perspective, with that awareness, understanding, and honoring and real appreciation for the fact that she's having that experience. From that place, try to support her. So as you're going through your week, whether it's at work or at home, with your friends, your peers, your coworkers, your intimate relationships, bring awareness to those times when you feel yourself in your mind thinking, oh, that's not a big deal, or I don't get it, or I need to know more, or I need to be convinced before I am able to offer this person some love or understanding or appreciation or support. You don't need to get it to support that other person. You don't need to have a full understanding. If somebody says, this is my experience, we have the responsibility to that person, particularly in our intimate circles, to take them at their word. Now, we might want to learn more to get the tools to support. We might want to learn more so that we can have a responsible and respectful conversation. But the learning more should not be done with a motivation for us to get it so then we can now support, because that is spiritual arrogance. It's not loving and it's not kind. So as you go forward this week, if you find yourself in a space, which you inevitably, most likely will, because that's part of the human experience, you find yourself in the space, in the presence of somebody who has a different viewpoint than you, who has a different experience than you, maybe has suffered different trauma than you, and they're trying to get support, understanding, love, care from you. Do your best not to project onto them the need for you to really understand it as a prerequisite for you to then be of support, because you may not get it. We all have different life experiences. The best that we can do is maybe get some facts, maybe get a little bit of understanding, have a little bit of empathy. But even if you don't get it, even if you don't understand it, trust, respect, and believe the person to whom you are speaking or with whom you are speaking when they say that they are having this experience or they are experiencing you in a certain way that may not be consistent with what you believe to be true, take them at their word and then act accordingly. We don't get to choose what other people should and should not experience. We don't get to choose how other people should and should not interpret the experiences that they've gone through. And we don't have the right to sit around and wait to be convinced, to be brought around to their way of thinking before we can then offer a loving ear or support or kindness. That's spiritual arrogance. When people tell you that this is their experience, take them at their word and move forward, whether you get it or not. You getting it is not required for you to be able to offer love, support, and kindness. And if you think that that's necessary or you make that a requirement, you are engaging in spiritual arrogance and you need to do some work. That's it. Have a great day. Have a great week. I'll see you soon.